In 2010, a book was published that should have destroyed one of the most persistent lies in American history. It contained poems, diary entries, love letters, notes scrawled on hotel stationery at 3 in the morning. And every single page was written by Marilyn Monroe. Not the Marilyn Monroe the world thinks it knows, the breathy blonde, the tragic victim, the beautiful accident, the real one, the woman who annotated James Joyce, who wrote modernist poetry about suicide and the Brooklyn Bridge, who read Dostoevsky and Freud and Rilke and kept a personal library of over 400 books. And the most unsettling part? Almost nobody talked about it. Thesis. Here's the thesis. The dumb blonde wasn't just a stereotype. It was an industrial product, manufactured by a studio, sustained by an estate worth $80 million a year, and reinforced by a culture that has always been more comfortable consuming Marilyn Monroe's body than confronting her mind. But her private writings blow that mythology apart. And today, we're going to read what she actually wrote. The product, how the myth was built. Let's start with the factory, because that's what it was. Norma Jean Mortensen was born a brunette in 1926. By the time 20th Century Fox was done with her, she'd been bleached, sculpted, and repackaged into the ultimate post-war male fantasy. The studio positioned her as beautiful, available, vulnerable, and fundamentally unthreatening in her intellect. But here's the detail most people miss. In 1953, Monroe was generating $15 million in box office returns for Fox, and she was being paid a fraction of what her male co-stars earned. So, what did she do? She went on strike. She walked out of Hollywood entirely, moved to New York, and founded her own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions, in the 1950s, when only 5% of American screenwriters were women. That's not the behavior of a helpless bombshell. That's a hostile takeover, and she knew exactly what she was doing with the persona. During the filming of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Monroe personally insisted on a line of dialogue that served as a wink to the audience about her own intelligence. Her character says, "I can be smart when it's important, but most men don't like it." She wasn't playing a dumb blonde. She was playing a woman smart enough to pretend to be one. And the audience was supposed to get the joke. But the joke has lasted 70 years because the people profiting from it never wanted it to end. The machine who profits from the myth. When Monroe died in 1962, she left 75% of her estate to her acting coach, Lee Strasberg. When Strasberg died in 1982, his second wife, Anna, a woman who had never met Marilyn Monroe, inherited the entire stake. Anna Strasberg turned that inheritance into a licensing empire, partnering with companies to slap Monroe's face on everything from Coca-Cola campaigns to Mercedes-Benz ads, generating over $7.5 million in licensing revenue in just 4 years. In 2011, Anna sold her stake to Authentic Brands Group for an estimated $20 to $30 million. Today, ABG drives $80 million a year in global sales using Monroe's name and likeness. They dress her digital likeness in Balenciaga. They partner with nail polish brands for centennial collections. And here's the uncomfortable math. A smiling, two-dimensional sex symbol whose image fits on a fast fashion t-shirt generates $80 million a year. A politically radical intellectual who wrote poetry about suicide and hated the FBI? That woman doesn't sell coffee mugs. The commercial machine doesn't just ignore the real Marilyn. It actively requires her not to exist. The discovery, what they actually found, which is what makes the publication of Fragments so extraordinary. In October 2010, editors Stanley Buchthal and Bernard Comment published a collection of Monroe's private writings that had been sitting in the Strasberg archives for decades. Handwritten notes, typed letters, poems scrawled on Waldorf Astoria stationery. And the editors did something radical. They published them exactly as Monroe wrote them. Her idiosyncratic spelling, her spatial mapping on the page, her raw, unfiltered voice. No editorial cleanup, no ghostwriter, just Marilyn. And what they found changes everything. These weren't celebrity diary entries about Hollywood parties. These were the private thoughts of a woman grappling with philosophy, identity, isolation, and the machinery of her own fame. Her words, the writing itself. On her marriage to Arthur Miller, a relationship the press reduced to the hourglass and the egghead, Monroe wrote with devastating emotional precision. She described Miller as the only person she'd ever trusted as much as herself. But as the marriage crumbled, her notes shifted. She wrote from their Connecticut home. "Starting tomorrow, I will take care of myself, for that's all I really have, and as I see it now, have ever had." That's not a victim's diary. That's a woman performing surgery on her own grief. On acting, she treated her craft like a scientist treats an experiment. She studied Lee Strasberg's method techniques, effective memory, sense memory, with clinical dedication. She wrote, "To really say what's in my heart, I'd rather show than to say. If I don't do that, I'm on the wrong track or in the wrong profession." Her private notebooks are filled with character studies and psychological evaluations of her roles. This wasn't a woman who showed up to look beautiful on camera. This was a serious artist, breaking down scripts the way an architect breaks down blueprints. But the poems are what silenced the room. Monroe wrote about the gap between her public self and her private void with a clarity that critics have compared to the modernist writers she admired. She wrote about suicidal thoughts with brutal, almost architectural honesty, contemplating the Brooklyn Bridge, then pulling back because she loved the view from it. In another fragment, she observed something about human loneliness that most philosophers spend entire careers trying to articulate. Only parts of us will ever touch only parts of others. One's own truth is just that, really, one's own truth. A poet in the Paris Review described her writing as possessing a quicksilver quality, a mind searching for answers while enacting the process of inquiry itself. This wasn't journaling. This was literature. The library, 400 books. And then there's the library. When Christie's auctioned Monroe's personal belongings in 1999, the catalog revealed over 400 books. Not decorative shelves arranged by an interior designer, books with dog-eared pages, marginalia, signs of heavy, repeated use, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, James Joyce's Ulysses, Fitzgerald, Proust, Freud, Aristotle's Metaphysics, Plato, Rilke, Camus, Whitman, Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, Kerouac, Dorothy Parker. She didn't just own Joyce, she analyzed his ability to write from a female perspective, observing that what mattered wasn't whether Joyce had experienced a woman's body, but whether he could penetrate the souls of people, male or female. Her acting coach Strasberg said she was one of the 2 or 3 most talented people he'd ever worked with. The other was Marlon Brando. Her roommate, actress Shelley Winters, put it more bluntly. If she'd been dumber, she'd have been happier. The politics they buried. Monroe wasn't just privately intellectual, she was publicly dangerous. When Ella Fitzgerald was barred from performing at the Mocambo nightclub in Hollywood because of segregation, Monroe called the owner and promised to sit in the front row every night if he booked Fitzgerald. He did. Fitzgerald later said, "I owe Marilyn Monroe a real debt. After that, I never had to play a small jazz club again." When Arthur Miller was dragged before HUAC during the McCarthy era, Monroe stood by him, risking her career to support his refusal to name names. Studio executives had already warned her not to read radical books on set. She'd been reprimanded for reading the autobiography of Lincoln Steffens during the filming of All About Eve. She kept reading. The FBI noticed. J. Edgar Hoover's agents monitored Monroe extensively. Recently unredacted files reveal informants embedded in her inner circle who documented her strong feelings for civil rights, for Black equality, her admiration for what was being done in China, her anger at McCarthyism, and her hatred of J. Edgar Hoover. The most desired woman in America had an FBI file because she cared about the wrong things. Why the world still won't listen? So why hasn't this changed anything? Because the forces preserving the myth are more powerful than the evidence destroying it. The estate generates $80 million from the icon. Over 300 biographies engage in what scholar Sarah Churchwell calls trashing Marilyn, assuming whatever Monroe accomplished was done entirely by accident. Conspiracy theories about her death crowd out any discussion of her mind. And as recently as 2022, Netflix released Blonde, a film so committed to Monroe's victimhood that critics said it erased the confident studio boss, the civil rights advocate, and the method actress, replacing her with a perpetual weeping victim devoid of intellectual life. The culture doesn't want the real Marilyn Monroe. The real Marilyn Monroe is inconvenient. The reappraisal. What's changing? But the tide is turning. Historians like Lois Banner have published biographies explicitly framing Monroe as an intellectual and a proto-feminist. Academics are analyzing her method acting techniques with the same rigor they apply to Brando. In the summer of 2026, the National Portrait Gallery in London is mounting a major centennial exhibition titled Marilyn Monroe, a Portrait. And its entire mandate is to present her not as a passive subject, but as an active collaborator in the construction of her own image. And maybe the most powerful force of all? Social media. Her Christie's book list goes viral every few months. Quotes from Fragments circulate on TikTok and Instagram, reaching a generation that never bought the dumb blonde story in the first place. They're reading the same books she read. They're discovering what she actually wrote. And they're furious that nobody told them sooner. Marilyn Monroe spent her entire life screaming from behind the image. She wrote poems about it. She fought the studio system over it. She read 400 books trying to build a self that the world would never allow her to show. The publication of Fragments didn't just reveal a few diary entries. It handed us the receipts. The proof that one of the most famous women in human history was systematically denied her own mind by the studios that built her, the estate that profits from her, and the culture that still prefers the lie. So the next time someone puts her face on a coffee mug or a t-shirt, remember what she actually wrote. Only parts of us will ever touch only parts of others. That line wasn't written by a bombshell. It was written by a philosopher who happened to be the most photographed woman on earth.